Okay, so you may as well make a start of it. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for dropping in to the fourth day of the Northwest Regional BBFA Better Business for All week. Some quick housekeeping tips. Please mute your mics. That should help with our audio quality. If you have any questions, and I hope you do, otherwise it's just going to be a one-way session, please raise your hands or just type in your questions into the chat on the right-hand side. Please turn your cameras off. We think that helps with audio quality as well, unless you're talking. You might want to use live captions, up to you, just in case there is poor audio quality throughout the session. You can just click the three circles, three dots, and choose live captions. And finally, we'll be recording the session. In fact, we already started recording the session. That's for future use of people that weren't able to attend the session. So I'm here today with Stuart, my colleague. Stuart is our local delivery lead in the West Midlands, and Stuart will be controlling our MS chat and encouraging you all, no doubt, to ask really interesting questions. Another colleague of mine is Jackie Fitzsimons, who's a local delivery lead in the Northwest region. Jackie has put together this pretty good, I mean that, long week series of sessions for us in order to learn more about BBFA and its key partners. So far, we've had pretty good sessions. We've had introductions to BBFA. We've had a whole series of 8 regulators. We've heard from trading standards, environmental health, fire and rescue services. We've also had a chance to hear from economic development units and heard about the role of growth hubs and LEPs in the BBFA. Today, we're going to meet Kieran Lahal of Worcestershire Regulatory Services, and Kieran is going to give us a particular focus on licensing. Kieran's main role is Business and Relationship Manager. However, he's also been acting licensing manager since January this year. Kieran tells me that he was always that person that said, I would never do licensing. However, after being asked 3 times, and luckily for us, she finally gave in. And now thinks it's actually not as bad as she previously thought. So a warm welcome to you, Kieran, and over to you.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, it's kind of a running joke now that my substantive role is actually business relationships manager. So I've been working at WRS for nearly 4 years now, and I've been doing licensing since January. So yes, licensing is fairly new to me. But I was kindly asked by Ops to do this presentation. So thank you for asking me, and thank you to you all who's chose to attend the session this afternoon. Next slide, please. So today, really what I'd like to go through with you today, based on the brief that I've been given, is just to provide you with an overview of who WRS are and how we've explored BBFA here in Worcestershire, of things that we've done with different customers, with different parts of the trade and businesses, and then just answer any questions that you've got at the end of the session. Next slide, please. So, who are we? Who are WRS? We're a shared service. We're made up of 6 district councils, and that's Bromsgrove District Council, Redditch Borough Council, Malvern, Wychavon, Wyre Forest and Worcester City. And we do all of their community environmental health, their technical services, their licensing functions. We do it all for all 6 districts. We have a front door triage system. So we have our own in-house team that takes all the calls from customers, or we have a triage system, so they'll take the calls and then they come back to us. They're logged into a system, and then we actually deal with any queries or complaints. So we don't actually speak to the customers in the first instance. We're intelligence led, so for complaints we look at if there are a pattern of complaints, so we look at the intelligence behind that. We do mapping, and that's how we actually deal with our complaints. But in terms of being proactive, we're very proactive with businesses, and we try to get them to the point where it's not a complaint or a query that they've got. Licensing, again, we do all aspects of licensing across the 6 districts in Worcestershire, and I'll take you through examples of that as we go along, especially in terms of what BBFA things we've put in place. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide just to show you things that we do in each of our areas. We're split into 3. So we've got community environmental health, we've got technical services there, and then we've got licensing as well. And that just gives you a bit of a pictorial view of what we do. And I'm sure most of you do all these functions within your teams and departments as well. Next slide, please. So I'm sure if you've been in many of the sessions this week, you would have heard about many things that BBFA can do. So in terms of WRS, this is what we think, or what we have decided to put under our BBFA umbrella. So we've got primary authority under there. So all 3 areas within our service have got either primary authorities at the moment, or we've got, well, especially within licensing, we're exploring primary authority. And I was doing that pre-COVID with one of the officers at Ops, which is Kate. We haven't explored that any further yet, but we were looking at that. But we have got primary authority in environmental health and our technical services team. We also have export certificates under our BBFA umbrella, because we work with lots of businesses to look at things that they need to export out. So we sign off those export certificates. And then we've got business advice and support, which we class as non-paid for services. So those are the business advice and support we give as a team to businesses, and within licensing, the taxi trade, for example, the business advice and support that we give that's non-paid. And then we've got the paid for services, which are things like pre-app advice that we've put in place for businesses as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so within our BBFA world, we have a lot of partnerships. And some of these are part of things that we do on a day-to-day basis, and then things that we actually do on a non-day-to-day basis. So one of those things is the work that we do with the Growth Hub, but I'm going to touch on that in the next slide. This slide really looks at things that you do as licensing teams or environmental health teams on a day-to-day basis, but you don't actually think that you do in BBFA. So we liaise quite regularly with the police, with our partners within the districts, and the LEP, and a lot of work that we do. We do a lot of work with our intelligence officer, and what we do is we produce intelligence products, and then we look at profiles of things that we can do to help businesses, or to look at where there are areas where businesses need help, or areas where we think there may be an issue, and it could be an environmental health issue, or it could be a licensing issue. And then we liaise with other partners within that circle to see what we can do proactively. So, for example, we worked with Public Health and the Gambling Commission after we did a profile on gambling premises, and we noticed that they were in certain areas through a mapping exercise in Worcestershire. So we've worked with the Gambling Commission and Public Health to try and look at how we can resolve that. We've also worked with the police on things where we've noticed there's issues with alcohol licenses, or where we've worked with community health partnerships where we found that there are high areas of issues in the nighttime economy, and then we've worked with the police and licensed premises holders to actually look at that and try and resolve that, and work with the license holders and the police in order to make that better and see what we can do to intervene and do good, instead of just having to have a license review. So the other partnership I wanted to touch on was the Growth Hub, because if you've been listening to some of the sessions this week, Growth Hubs have been quite popular. So I just wanted to talk you through our process of what we do with the Growth Hub. So next slide, please. Thank you. So our Growth Hub is called Worcestershire Business Central. So when I started in post 4 years ago as a business relationship manager, I accidentally, at a networking event, bumped into the lady who actually started this whole process of how the Growth Hub works now. And she'd only started it recently, so it was fairly new when I met her, and that was 4 years ago, and it's still working really well now. But what they actually did was they set up a forum where Worcestershire Business Central, so all the officers who sit within the Growth Hub, the leads, actually met on a quarterly basis with the County Council and the Economic Development Manager, who actually manages all the economic development officers across the districts. The LEP representative was also in the network, the Chamber of Commerce and FSB. And then obviously, as a result of me bumping into Phoebe at an event, we were also made aware of the good things of what this partnership does, and we were invited along to the first meeting, and we've been going ever since. So what that has enabled us to do is understand what each of those areas do and how we can work together. And it doesn't mean that we work together on every single thing. We're just more aware of things that are actually happening in each area at the meetings. So we'll give an update of what we're all doing. And if anybody needs any more information, there's obviously the network that's behind that, so we can email or exchange information outside of that meeting. But it allows us to see what's happening, and at each quarterly meeting there would be an invite for somebody to attend. So it could have been a local bank that's got something in the pipeline for new businesses, or it could have been a training provider that's offering free training to businesses that we could then let businesses know. One of the things that I've done proactively for WRS, and this isn't just for licensing, it's for the whole of WRS, is that I've been over and I've met with the Business Central team, and I've gave them training about what we do as a service, because what they did say to us is that all the queries that we get, what they were doing, they were just fielding them back to us, so they were just signposting them to us, but they wanted to be able to. They wanted to be able to actually answer those queries. So we did some training with the officers, and then we also we allowed them to put our links onto their website, and they put information about us on their website as well. But then we went that little step further, because they actually give out information to new businesses, or if businesses have queries, they give them information. And we put together actual leaflets and things that they could actually put into their packs and give to businesses as well. So instead of just signposting them to us, they could actually do the whole actual conversation in that one meeting, and not signposting it on. And that's how our partnership with the Growth Hub works at the moment. And obviously through the pandemic, it's been vital that we've had that relationship, because we were able to actually make changes on our website, and they'd know at the same time. We just pick up the phone and let them know. So that has really helped. Next slide, please. This is just a slide of all the partnerships that are part of the Growth Hub. I just thought it was a nice slide just to see their logos on there. So it's not telling us anything apart from who they actually are. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think one of the things Jackie said to me when she gave me a call was, put some case studies in and just show us what you actually do with customers under BBFA. And there's so many things that come to light when you're actually thinking about it, rather than when you're doing it. And lots of you probably do all this already, but you don't actually realise that it can be as part of BBFA. So I'm just going to, I haven't done case studies, but what I will do is just give you a few examples of things that we've done here at WRS. So for example, the taxi trade. During COVID, we've had to put in extra measures to help the taxi trade. So obviously with the changes in the regulations, we've had to keep them updated with all the changes. So not only changing things on the website, but actually providing them with information outside, whether it be by letter or email. And actually working with the Growth Hub has really helped do that. Because when people have been asking for grants or information about money, it's amazing how many different people they will call. We put in a deferral process for the taxi trade, whereby they could defer their license rather than actually renew if they didn't have the funds to actually renew at this point in time. And we've liaised with the county council, the economic development officers, and all the teams on the ground as part of that networking group, to make sure that the trade were aware of all the changes we were making. Other things that we've done, pavement licenses regime, which I'm sure you've all had fun doing. I mean, a lot of you have probably just had to do it for one authority, but we really had to do it in a very short space of time for 6 districts, which wasn't great. It was quite painful, but it's a lot of that work, and it involved working with the partners. It involved working with the other districts, but also with people that go out and visit the businesses all the time. So we've had to liaise with all the districts, but we had to liaise with the businesses themselves, and really work with them to help them understand what the regime meant and what they can and can't do. So we've had to do a little bit of proactive enforcement as well, and we haven't taken the hard hand. If they've had tables and chairs outside, we've just quietly said, you know, you can't have these out. You haven't got a license. So you need to get a license. And we've gone through what they actually have to do in order to get that, because we found that this was one process that was done within a short space of time, and we had to use all channels of communication that we could find possible to actually do that, and that some of that actually meant actually going out and doing some proactive enforcement. Other things that we've done is pre-app advice. So we offer a pre-application advice service, which is a paid for service, and that gives technical advice and assistance on completing application forms. So we'll give help and advice around terminology, we'll do the validation checks, we'll check the form prior to submission to make sure it's okay. And then we also offer a mediation service at the end. If there are any objections received from anyone, so we'll help and mediate between the parties involved to make sure that we can do all we can with that. We also did a rollout of child exploitation training in the taxi trade, and that was to all taxi drivers across the whole of Worcestershire. So we worked with the police and safer communities to roll that out for the taxi trade, and it was they didn't have to pay for it. It was funded by an organisation that we worked with. So those are all things that we've done and implemented to help businesses and licensed premises and the taxi trade, but sometimes you wouldn't even think that would fall under BBFA, but it in fact does. Next slide, please. So this is just a list of projects that we've done at WRS that we would class as falling under our BBFA umbrella. I've mentioned a lot of them already, but just things like zoo inspections, emergency planning exercises. We've done things like Best Buy 9, nighttime economy, which I'm sure these are all things that you've heard of or have taken part in. So yeah, it's a list there just for you to have a look at and read through. Next slide, please. So how does this work? Internally, it works because we have a good relationship with the 6 districts as a partnership, as a shared service. The licensing team have one manager, which is me, so I'm the person that will liaise with all 6 districts, so they don't have to go to all 6 different people. We have one board, and we've got a willingness to explore new ideas, and we have to have transparency between the 6 districts. But the other thing that really is the underpinning thing is actually encouraging staff members to do things differently and to check things, and just small things such as encouraging staff members to cross-reference things, check the PA register before they go out, cross-reference environmental health modules and licensing modules, just small things like that that really make a difference, because then you'll be more proactive and things are coming to fruition more upfront, rather than you having to realise that something's happened way down the line. Externally, the partnership meetings that I've already mentioned that happen quarterly help. Yes, it does take up a bit of time, but you have that network in place, you know what's going on, you can communicate things there and then, and obviously communication afterwards is key, so you can just liaise with those people that you need to, and again it is building up those relationships to make that happen. Next slide, please. This slide I've put in only because I use this all the time, and I think it's quite helpful when you're thinking about BBFA, because if there's an awareness of something that you think will work as part of BBFA, BBFA, then there's a desire to do it, you need to get the knowledge and you need to get the momentum, and you need to create that platform and that communication to make it happen. And then it goes back to BBFA principles about setting the governance, so the ability to action and to make those adjustments required to make it happen, and then reinforce. So identify champions, identify those people within your teams that can actually do the work, and then look at any lessons that have been learnt by anybody else. Look at other authorities that have done it already and talk to them and see if you can do it any better or any different. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, what to consider: have a look at what you're doing, try and think outside of your circle, make the links, because in our growth hub, by just talking to other people, you'll find that actually if you're doing something, it will benefit somebody else as well. And then just communicate that and set up the communication channels to make that happen and take the risk. Next slide, please. Yep, that's it. Thoughts and questions? Has anybody got any questions or thoughts?
We've got a couple of minutes left. I see some questions. Feel free to chip in as well, Stuart. Jackie Fitzsimon, would you like to bring up a question?
Yeah, I think you've probably answered some of this already in your really excellent presentation, Kieran, but in the Northwest, there are not very well formed Better Business for All programmes. If you were sort of starting from scratch now, what sort of top tips would you have for anybody who would like to take this approach forward?
I think the first thing you need to do is establish the network. I think that's the key point. And I think even if there's just 3 of you, just starting that liaison can really help. Because I think when the one in Worcestershire started, it was only first originally the LEP, the Growth Hub, and the County Council. So it did really start small. But I think once you start doing things and talking to people, then you actually realise what else you can do.
Right. Okay. That's really good. And I think sort of nationally, I think we would say that our BBFA programs are all shapes and sizes. That kind of makes sense, really, and it's what you want in your locality, isn't it? But I think it's what we've heard, I think, all through the week is about starting the conversation, and that's, I think that's sort of really right through your presentation. It is about that communication. So thanks, Kieran. Thank you.
I see in the chat that Teresa's got a question. Would you like to ask Teresa?
Hello, sorry. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Kieran. I just wanted to check or get your views on what do you feel the benefits are of working with the Growth Hub partnership that you've got?
There's so many, Teresa, because more benefits. There's probably more benefits for the customer than there is for us, because the customer doesn't need to go to all different. They don't need to make 100 phone calls in order to get their answer. And I think that's what we were finding, is that the customer's so frustrated by the time they've made that 3rd phone call, when actually if we just did a little bit of stuff in the background to make it easier for them, it actually makes it easier for us as well. Because I mean, a lot of the work that we did in terms of the training with the Growth Hub team, and we were getting those calls on our front line, so our numbers have actually come down because they're taking the calls and they're taking that burden off us. So it's kind of twofold, really.
That's a definite win-win, isn't it? That's brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Kira, we probably have time for one more question from me this time, if you don't mind. Would you say you've had more or less engagement with businesses or partners, for that matter, during COVID, compared with pre-COVID?
Yes, we have.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, because I think it's made us think more, for licensing definitely, it's made us more proactive. I think in terms of environmental health, they'd already got to the point where they were quite proactive as a team anyway, but licensing, I don't think we were as proactive as we probably are now. So we are engaging with them more than we were before.
Thanks, Kieran. Stuart, do we have any more questions?
There's just one more in the chat about how's the approach made it easier for businesses and non-regulators like Growth Hub advisors to understand the licensing role?
Yeah, most definitely. When I went to do the training with the Growth Hub, the area that they said that they understood the least was licensing, because they felt that there's so many different elements to it, and by us just putting it into fact sheets for them, it really helped. So they wouldn't deal with the most technical queries. We wouldn't expect the Growth Hub to deal with those, but just to deal with the easier questions, such as how much is a license in one district, or when are there licensing surgeries, or just simple things like that. They can answer those queries, but the technical stuff we would still deal with. But yeah, definitely they did find that licensing was a much difficult area.
Great, thank you.
How are we doing, Stuart? Is that it for the questions? Because we're just a bit over time now.
There's just one last slide.
Kieran, I know you mentioned that you're happy for people to email you directly. Maybe if you get a second, you can just type your email address in on the chat there. I haven't got it to hand, but in the meantime, let me just close by saying, considering the amount of impact licensing has in all of our lives, whether it's ordering a taxi, or whether you're a street trader, or buying a pet, or some environment where alcohol sales is involved, we don't seem to have, unless I've missed it, a great deal of engagement with licensing officers or licensing managers. So I, for one, have certainly appreciated this session. I've learned quite a lot in the last half hour. Thank you so much, Kieran, for being willing to take some time out to engage with us. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Thank you also to my colleague Stuart and to Jackie Fitzsimons for putting this week of sessions together. Thank you very much, Kieran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.